Hello, this is the weekend grab bag for the 30th of March 2025. Remember, in a couple of days, it's going to be April Fool's Day. Of course, it's April Fool's Day on April the 1st for everywhere in the world, but in Britain, where it's April Fool's Day the whole year round. Okay, now what do I... Oh, by the way, there'll be a slight difference in the way I'm recording this because the long all-in-one video causes my software a little bit of indigestion. I'm recording each segment separately, and that way I can do it in short clips, and the software might not be so upset by it. And if you really don't like that, then let me know. But I'll see how it goes with the editing. Okay, now what do I have for you? I have the Myanmar earthquake. Rachel Reeves raiding pensioners again. Lakshmi Mittal, a very rich man, thinking of leaving the country. That's rather amusing because people like Ellen DeGeneres has come to this country because she doesn't like Donald Trump. I wish her luck here in this country. She may be taking on the non-dom tax status that Lakshmi Mittal is running away from. But frankly, I'd rather have Lakshmi Mittal here than Ellen DeGeneres. Okay, and then there's the few words from Justin Welby, our ex-Archbishop of Canterbury, and an incident of stealing in a supermarket in a Yorkshire village. The case of Enoch Burke, that sounds, as I keep saying, like a Victorian novel. He's standing up against the Irish government, and to finish off with, an octopus in a bottle. Okay, I'm Granniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. Okay, I'm going to start with Myanmar because it may not seem like it's much of a problem for us here in Western Europe or America or even Australia, I suppose. But it's a terrible tragedy. There've been over, well, I think they're reckoning on about 2,000 people that they know about who have died in that earthquake. I'm trying to see some figures here. The last I heard it was 1,700, but it can't possibly be that. It was a huge, ghastly 7.7 earthquake. And it was so violent that even in Thailand, everything shook. And there are videos of water splashing out of rooftop pools in Bangkok, which you can see is quite a distance away. There's a fault here. You see, once upon a time, India was an island. It was down here, and it spent the past few hundreds of millions of years just creeping forward and pushing into the Eurasian continent, lifting Nepal up bit by bit, shoving it up, and everything folds. That's why you've got all these mountains up here. And I think it's about 4 inches a year that this plateau is growing. And every so often the pressure just reaches the point where everything just jerks forward like that. Oh, sorry, pause for sneeze. And that's what happened here. I think I have a diagram. So there's it looks like two faults. There's this fault here, which is the Indian plate. And then there's a fault here, and it looks like part of that is going north and the other part is going south. So obviously, as India moves, it moves this, and then this isn't moving or is going south. And this is a picture, still photo of a building in Bangkok. Now, I'll show you where Bangkok is again. Bangkok's down here, well out of the earthquake area officially, but everything shook in Bangkok anyway. And I think most buildings, modern buildings, are earthquake proofed because this is a known dodgy area. And older buildings have been brought up to spec, at least some way. But this building here was brand new. As a matter of fact, it was being built by a Chinese company. And when things started shaking, it just collapsed. You just saw the floors just collapsing into each other like a stack of cards. Now, that shouldn't have happened. Don't buy Chinese is the answer, I suppose. They must have been cheating somewhere along the line. And that has killed some people. I don't know whether it's workers or people in the neighbourhood when the building fell down. It says here the Thai capital, Bangkok, is more than 621 miles away from the epicentre, and yet an unfinished high-rise building in the city was felled by it. Yeah, it shouldn't have fallen down. Well, this was a terrible earthquake and many people have been killed, and Myanmar is going to be in serious trouble because all sorts of infrastructure has been damaged. And yeah, I can extend my sympathy. We should all be, well, perhaps doing what we can to help in some way, and perhaps thanking whatever deity we believe in, or just our lucky stars that we are not in an area where this sort of thing happens relatively regularly. I am so sorry for the people who are there. This is a living example of the ludicrousness of the tax system. The whole tax system, which started small a couple of hundred years ago, has sort of got bolt-ons and add-ons and exceptions and that sort of thing. And it's become ridiculously complicated. And the whole thing needs clearing up, actually. But one of the anomalies is something called the non-dom status. A person with non-domiciled status, sometimes called a non-dom, lives in the United Kingdom and is considered under British law to be domiciled in another country. So this fellow here, Lakshmi Mittal, who is a steel magnate, I said magnate, not magnet, he lives here. He takes advantage of British amenities, but he's considered to be domiciled, I don't know, wherever he comes from. I suppose it's India, I might be wrong. And for that reason, it's not that you don't pay any taxes at all, but certainly the taxation levels are different. There are many people who have this non-dom status in Britain, and it was just a way of attracting very wealthy people. In America, they're doing it for... they're now, I don't know whether you have a non-dom status, but there's a new sort of golden visa system where if you pay $5 million, you can become an American citizen. On the one hand, you might make the argument, well, it means more really rich people are going to come in, which means more money in the system. It also means the sort of people who are coming in are going to be well, people from the Middle East, Saudi princes, those sort of, or even worse, Qatari princes. And that might not be so good for America, but that's for you Americans to decide. Lakshmi Mittal may leave the country in a blow to the government's attempt to attract investment. You see, that was the whole point of the non-dom status, and they're tightening up the rules on that. I'm not quite sure how, but they are. But it's not just the non-dom status that Mr. Mittal is probably worried about. He can see the way the wind is blowing, and the wind is blowing towards recession in this country now. He can see even running a business has become more difficult. The laws about employing people are tipping over by, who was it? Angela Rayner's doing that. I mean, her ideas are that you can't sack somebody after they've been there for one day. if you've employed them, then you have to go through the entire sacking process. I think she's changing that to now something like 3 weeks. I don't have that absolutely straight, but it's something along those lines. The point I'm making is that employing people has become far more nerve-wracking. You're paying higher national insurance and you can't sack people as easily as you could before. And the 0 hours rules have been changed. Now, 0 hours aren't very nice, but they do offer employment to people who are starting on the ladder and who might be in other ways otherwise unemployable. But that's going as well. And he can see that British industry is going to suffer from this. And he's thinking about bailing out. And frankly, I can't blame him. When you've got that sort of money, you can go anywhere, which is something that the Labour Party just don't seem to have realised. You see, they're working a communist system, which only works so long as the country is hermetically sealed. Unfortunately, people can get out of this place, although it wouldn't surprise me if the government didn't try and do something about that as well. You know, newspapers do weight the evidence somewhat, and it's sort of interesting that the Telegraph has chosen this picture of Rachel Reeves, our Chancellor of the Exchequer. Our first woman Chancellor of the Exchequer, looking a bit sour and with her hair somewhat disarranged. Not quite as tidy as it normally is. And it says here 700,000 more pensioners to be hit with income tax bills. I think it's pretty awful that any pensioner should pay income tax. But what's happening is that as Rachel Reeves pushes businesses into bankruptcy or pushes very rich people to leave the country, she is looking for money elsewhere. And almost 750,000 more retirees could be forced to pay income tax from next year, because she's sort of going down the back of the sofa, isn't she? The thing about pensioners is they've worked and they've put money away for private pensions, and they're getting public pensions a little bit as well. And this is their reward for a lifetime of work. And now she's found that they are the people who can't leave, who can't run away. And so she's robbing them, basically. And that reminds me very much of Dobbin in Animal Farm. You remember he was the horse who, when everything was going wrong and production levels weren't at their peak, Dobbin would just say, "I must work harder." And he did work harder until he broke himself. And then the new owners of the farm, the pigs, just sent him to the knacker's yard to make use of whatever was left of his body and make a profit out of it. Right, around 8.5 million people aged 66 and over already pay tax each year, but this could rise to 9.2 million from April 2026, the former pensions minister said. The figures come after a new forecast released by the Office for Budget Responsibility suggested that the state pension will rise by 4.6% next year. Anyone on the new full state pension would start paying tax after just £46 of additional income. Yeah, it's like a bored prison officer hitting a prisoner, isn't it? He does it because he can and he has nothing else to do. And here we're going to be talking about my favourite ex-cleric, Justin Welby. I failed to act on church abuse because it was overwhelming. Justin Welby has said he failed to handle allegations of historical sexual abuse of children properly because they were on an overwhelming scale. Mr. Welby resigned as Archbishop of Canterbury in November after reports said he did not adequately follow up allegations about John Smith, a serial abuser who was heavily involved with the Church of England. Yeah, he had the blessing of the Church of England and he ran orphanages or schools or something on behalf of the Church of England. And Justin Welby found what he was being told. He found it to be so overwhelming, he sort of froze on that like a rabbit in the headlights. Justin Welby had been an oil executive before he went into the church. And I believe that as a businessman, he was supposed to have been quite successful. And that's a difference. You see, he was appointed a bishop probably because people thought, well, he ran a successful big business, a multinational or part of a multinational, so he could obviously run the church. But what they weren't thinking of was that running a business where things are cut and dried and you're making commercial decisions is not the same as running a church where your product and your material, both of those are people and people's consciences. They're not something you can make the sort of business decisions about that an oil executive can make. And he couldn't handle it. What a disaster. OK, my comment on Justin Welby. And now we come to the tale of Enoch Burke. If ever I saw a situation that was just made for a Victorian novel, then Enoch Burke would be the name of that novel. It's also a situation that so closely resembles the play Antigone by Sophocles that it might as well have been written by him. Also, Jean-Henri did a version as well, I believe, and I think he wrote that during the war. So again, it was the story about religious conviction over giving in to the authorities. The play by Sophocles has it that Antigone, the daughter of Oedipus and the sister of Polynices, was punished for following her religion. Polynices had been killed in battle, and the king, Creon, had declared that because he was a traitor, he would not be buried and could not be mourned. And Antigone sneaked out of the palace at night and went to bury her brother, whereupon Creon condemned her to death. And a lot of the play was the dialogue between Antigone and Creon about the difference. Well, actually, Enoch Burke put it himself in this quote here. He insists on being a Christian in Mountjoy prison, where he was imprisoned for the stance he was taking, or I can be a pagan acceptor of transgenderism outside it. And that's basically what Antigone said to Creon. I could bury my brother and be at peace with the gods, with her gods, or I can accept the situation and ignore the gods. And she decided that the gods were more important, and so does Enoch Burke. Although there is another side to the story. He refused to acquiesce to the transgender orthodoxy. And that was one thing. He refused to do it and he was suspended. And then what he did was he stood outside the school, saying that he had a right to be in the school as a teacher. Now, at this point, you might say, why didn't he just walk away and find a job in another school? Well, I'll get to that in a minute, but the Irish courts have seized £40,617.69 from Mr. Burke's bank account. And they're doing that not because he wouldn't call the transgender pupil by his, whatever, preferred pronouns. He did it. He was fined because he was standing outside the school, which was breaking a court order.
Enoch Burke here. I'm standing outside the Bank of Ireland branch in Castlebar, County Mayo. When I left my workplace today, Wilson's Hospital School, at about 5:30 in the evening, I checked my bank balance and this is what I found. €0 in my bank account. I have been robbed of €40,617 by the courts. Judge David Nolan, Mr. Rossa Fanning, the Attorney General, and the government, all working hand in hand.
And the reason for that is that he had a fine of about £700 for every day he was standing outside the school. And when he refused to comply, the fine was increased to £1,400 a day. So that's how it got up to 40,000 so quickly. And even worse, they are now talking about seizing his other assets because the £40,000 isn't enough anymore. A receiver appointed over teacher Enoch Burke's salary may be allowed to seize his other assets as the funds in his bank account are insufficient to meet the level of daily fines imposed on him for breaching orders not to attend the school where he once taught, a High Court has heard. And this was in the Catholic Herald. The facts of the matter are that Enoch Burke is in jail for refusing to abide by a court injunction to desist from attending the school where he had been suspended from teaching. The administrative leave arose pending the resolution of a disciplinary process which arose due to Mr. Burke's behaviour in refusing to accept instruction from the school to address a transgender child, and here even the Catholic Herald succumbs, to address a transgender child by their preferred name and to use the pronoun they instead of he. So there's no doubt that Mr. Burke is being provocative, but he's doing it because he believes that no teacher should be forced to refer to a pupil by any other pronoun than that which indicates their birth sex, their biological sex. And he is caught in this trap, as is the government. And who is going to win? I don't know. But certainly the legality of what the government is doing, the whole system is being called into question by Mr. Burke's stand, literally his stand, as he stands outside the school saying he should be in the school and he should be allowed to teach in the way that, by his lights, God has told him to teach. That is, referring to, as well as imparting knowledge, referring to pupils by their correct pronouns. All right, and that's where the situation is. But he is not being fined for refusing to call the child by a different pronoun. That's not what he's being fined for. He's being fined for standing outside the school. And you can decide whether he's right or slightly mad. Well, that's up to you. It is a serious philosophical problem, for sure. Have you ever complained to your children's school about some procedure or other? Well, if you're here in the UK, I would suggest you go, step very carefully. This man and his wife or partner was arrested for complaining to the school. Parents arrested here. It even got reported in The Guardian, and not unsympathetically either. Maxie Allen and Rosalind Levine say 6 officers came to their house after primary school objected to WhatsApp comments. Now, what happened, so far as I've been able to work out, was this. This man and his partner, they have a daughter who has certain educational needs. Apparently she has epilepsy and some sort of special educational need. I don't know. She can't be very badly impaired because she's attending an ordinary school, but obviously she needs some support. Now, apparently the parents, or rather Mr. Allen, was upset about the way the school was being run, because the headmaster resigned and then the deputy head was put in place without any discussion. And he raised an issue about that, about transparency and how these things were done and all the rest of it. And this caught the attention of the school. He complained to the school, apparently, and he also commented on it on the WhatsApp group for parents at the school. And the school got so annoyed, they told him not to come into the school. I don't know, maybe he'd been into the school as well. It might be that the fellow was a bit of a pest, but he's a parent. He's got a child with special needs, and obviously he's going to be more engaged than many other parents are, simply by circumstances. He was told not to come into the school. They didn't want to see him on the premises. So when he was asking about various things to do with his daughter, the only thing he could do was email or WhatsApp them, or however it was. And then they started saying he was harassing them with emails. And finally, they called the police. They called the police here. And here we see the police, 6 of them. Yeah, it's amazing how many police they can field when it comes to dealing with parents who are concerned about their children at school. They actually arrested the parents in front of their, no doubt, distraught daughter. They took the parents to the police station, questioned them, and then put them in jail. They were in the police cell for about 11 hours. I don't know what happened to their child. They were there for about 11 hours before the police released them. Now, I'm pretty sure that I know what happened. What happened was, the school was being run in a certain way by people who weren't interested in questions. In normal circumstances, they'd have just regarded these parents as pests who get in the way of their nice, clean, tidy schedule or whatever. But they were conditioned to the idea of calling the police, because that's been happening more and more for harassment. And it's all to do with the hate crime laws and the general non-crime hate incident laws, where people get the idea they should call the police for anything that makes them uncomfortable. And the police, having become accustomed to coming in on things that they had no business to come in on, they came out to fulfill that task. They are not anymore thinking that their primary reason for drawing a wage is to deal with breaches of the law. They have got the police have now got the idea that they deal with breaches of manners or poor relations between neighbours or that sort of thing, or insults. And so their mechanism ground into action. I think that's what happened. This is a post by Matt Goodwin. I can't remember the last time I saw 6 police officers together. But here they are arresting 2 parents in front of their children for complaining about their local school in a WhatsApp group. And now he says Britain is completely and utterly lost. I might say that what happened was the parents were released and then they had to pay for a taxi to bring them however far it was back to their house. It was apparently quite a distance. So they had to pay for that. And they had to pay in distress. And then after a couple of days, the police said, sorry, no further action. They didn't say, sorry, we shouldn't have done that. They just said, we're not taking this any further. We've gone into the case. Now, they might have been compelled to go into the case because having received a complaint from the school, possibly about a non-crime hate incident, I think the way they've set themselves up now, they have to respond. So it might not be entirely their fault. On the other hand, 6 police, not in their patrol cars dealing with violent criminals or anything. No, it's much easier to come round and harass a couple of parents who are concerned about their child in a school. And I don't know, I think Dr. Goodwin might be wrong in saying Britain is completely and utterly lost. It isn't, but we're going through a tough patch, that's for sure. Now, how about this from Yorkshire? What about this for a disgrace that boils my blood? A lovely little village in Yorkshire called Gargrave, one of our favourites when travelling through on our narrowboat. It has everything you need for such a small village, a chip shop, an Indian restaurant, and it has 3 lovely pubs and a co-op. I would like to point out an Indian restaurant means it has people there from the Indian subcontinent working and obviously well integrated into the community. And it's got 3 lovely pubs here, it says, and a co-op. That's a supermarket. One of these pubs, called the Anchor Inn, is also a Premier Inn hotel. Well, this hotel is now home to loads of illegal immigrants. The other day, a few of these illegals entered the co-op and emptied the shelves of all its alcohol and just walked out. A local resident said, I think that's 2. A local resident said to the guy behind the counter, "Are you not going to ring the police or do anything?" And he said, "No, we're not allowed to. We've been told to just send the bill to the Premier and it just gets paid." He says it happens most days. Right, so who is paying the bill? Well, the Premier is paying it, and then the Premier will pass the cost on to the government. That is footing the bill for these illegal migrants. Now, you might ask, most of these illegal migrants are Muslims, apparently, but they're stealing alcohol either they are Muslims and they have so little respect for any rules at all that they drink, or they're not Muslim. Who knows? The fact is, they're criminals. They came here illegally, and they're being put up at the expense of the taxpayer. And they are not only draining the taxpayer, they're draining our social contract, because other people are going to go into that shop, if it's the only shop in the village, and they're going to see these criminals just walking in, taking stuff and walking out. It's threatening and it's unsettling. And it's not, if children are there, they're going to see this happening. This is not a good lesson for them. It is actually destroying the people who live in Gargrave even more than the average taxpayer, because they're getting this almost every day, according to that guy behind the counter. Apparently the police are aware of this and just let it happen. How the hell can that be right? No, it cannot be right. It is not right. I made a video, one of the videos in this grab bag is a video of 6 police officers turning up at the home of a couple of parents who got annoyed about the way their school principal had been apparently shoehorned into office and had complained about that on WhatsApp. And 6 police officers turned up. And yet here in Gargrave, the police are aware of this and they don't care. They're not turning up to that. Not only are we putting them up, but we're paying for all this criminality too. But it's not just the money, as I said. It's the social contract which the people are seeing. It's their trust with the police. And it's the children seeing what happens when you get into gangs and steal things. The whole thing is cancerous. It's socially cancerous. It's just so wrong on many fronts. I don't see how it can be right in any way. I suppose you all know how bad it is for the children of a mother on the bottle. Well, here you have a counterexample. A marine biologist discovered something incredible in a beer bottle on the sea floor. And it says here, sometimes nature thrives in the most unlikely places. One morning this week, Hannah Koch was snorkeling in the Florida Keys when she came across a brown beer bottle on the sea floor. Koch, a marine biologist for Florida's Monroe County, picked up the bottle, planning to carry it with her and later toss it out. Through her dive mask, Koch peered inside to make sure it was empty, and that's when she saw an eye looking back at her. It wasn't just one eye, actually, but dozens. Inside the bottle was an octopus mum with a brood of babies. Here, let's see what we've got. I suppose most of you have seen those videos of octopuses going into bottles. They can get into the most astonishing little spaces. And you probably also know that after an octopus mother has given birth, she dies. Something happens to the octopus brain and she just sits over her brood until they can fend for themselves. She doesn't eat. She just stays there and looks after her baby and then babies and then dies of starvation. Anyway, so she's gone into this bottle as her final resting place. I could think of worse, really, in the situation. She could probably see everything that was going on, but had enough sense to know that the glass of the bottle was protecting her. You could see their eyes, you could see their tentacles, Koch said in a recent interview. They were fully formed. Now, there's a rewrite on this, just for your information, something I didn't know. Octopuses technically have arms, not tentacles. I looked that one up. And it says here, how many tentacles does an octopus have? And if you said 8, you'd be wrong, because octopus has 8 limbs, but they are arms, not tentacles. So the difference is an arm is a limb that's covered with suction cups from beginning to end, while a tentacle has suckers only at its end. Right, so there you are. Next time you're playing a game of Trivial Pursuit with your kids, you'll get that question right and they'll go, "How did you know that?" All right, well, instead of taking the bottle with her, I should hope not, she gave it to her colleague, another marine biologist, who carefully placed it back on the sandy sea floor. Now, apparently, Koch is involved in planning out sites for marine life to find havens, and they were going to make them out of concrete. And I would suggest that concrete is quite a poisonous sort of thing to put in the sea, and it might be better if they made this habitat out of discarded bottles. I think that octopus has shown Dr. Koch the way to do it. You can build walls and sort of caves out of bottles. You don't have to use cement. And then some creatures can go in the bottles and some creatures could just use the shelter of a bottle wall. Okay, right. Well, that's the octopus in the bottle story. Right. And that's the grab bag for the 30th of March 2025. Till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.